Good morning. In this video I'm going to review the basics of how to create an ACM graphics program with Spring. First thing you need to do, open up Spring and create a new Java project. And then click Next so we can set up our libraries. And you should have installed acm.jar, or downloaded it rather, from the Java Task Force website. And then you can link to that in the Libraries tab, and that just brings in the functionality that we're going to use. Once we have that, we can right-click and create a new Java file. By selecting Class. And we don't need to click the main method here because we're not going to use that directly. I'm going to minimize this. So once we have our program started, the first thing we need to do is extend our graphics libraries. So graphics program. And that brings in the main method from a program called graphics program and all of the ACM graphics. And remember, Spring can bring in your imports for you. So if you just mouse over and wait a second, this quick fix menu comes up. And notice it brings that in. So as you go through this review, make sure you listen to the audio. So I'm including that comment just for those who aren't listening and who are watching instead right now. Now once we have this basic functionality brought in, we want to declare all of the objects and things that we're going to use. So I might have something like integer x, so I can set that equal to 0. And this review is not for those of you who already know how to use ACM in an advanced way. And then if there's any objects we're going to use, such as a G-oval, I'm going to give this just any old name, circle perhaps. And then we can specify our height and width right here. So the reason we put these right away, our variables and objects that we're going to use, is that every method we might have, or everything with curly braces later, anything we create inside the curly braces isn't shared outside of those. So we want to put most of the items we're going to use inside the curly braces for the whole program. I'll bring in a G rectangle. And the new means we're just creating a new object based on these. And then we have the height, or the width and the height. And then we want to finally bring in these import statements. Now any action we use or that takes place needs to happen in a method. So you've seen me use the init, the initialization method, before. That's for things that are going to start before the game actually starts, or a program actually starts. I often refer to that as the pre-game ritual. If you're looking at this review, I would say that's something you don't want to do. Instead, you can do those things right at the beginning of public void run, which is our method. So any activity needs to take place in a method. So run is going to be the primary one that executes. It's going to start automatically when the program begins. So we can do lots of things in there, like circle dot set color. Since there's sort of a verb with set color, we can't do that up top here where we declared those. So we can do set fill color, color dot red, and we're going to need an import for that. So I'm going to click and then hover. Bring that in. set filled, and that's a Boolean, so we can just do lowercase, true. And then I'm going to add it to the screen. And this is going to be the XY coordinate, which is going to be added at, so that's going to be 20 pixels over and 20 down. So X is first and X is across, and then the second one is the Y value. That's how far down from the top of the screen. To make life easy, I'm going to copy this and paste it and change these to the rectangle. And I'm going to move these down some, just so they're not overlapping. And one additional thing I can do, so I don't have to resize my window every time I run the program, so I'm going to use the set size method, and I'm going to make mine, let's say, 800 across and 700 tall. That should accomplish everything I need to do. Now let me test my program thus far. Remember, you want to test every now and then so that you don't have to troubleshoot too much at the same time. Now never ever, if you're using key input or a mouse click, something like that, put a while loop in that code. You would put your loop here in the run method. And for most of what we do, we can just use the default while true. Now the test on while loops won't use that, so this isn't a review for that part. But once we have that in place, we can do something like circle.move, and I'm just going to have it move one across and one down, and I'm going to put in a pause of 50 milliseconds just so we can see it. Let's take a look. And it seems to be working thus far. Now, when we have action like this, if we want to check for something, some sort of interaction, we could put a lot of our if statements right in here, because it's constantly going to be in the loop. So what we can do is do something like if circle dot get, and I'm going to look down here for the get x, which is its x location. Let's say, so that'll be how far it goes to the right. If that's greater than 250, let's say, and I just made that number up for the sake of example, I'm going to reset the location of the circle. So I can do circle dot set location and put in some coordinates here. Let's put it at 10, 10. So that would reset its location back towards the top left. So let's see if that works. So it has nothing to do with the rectangle. It's just how far over. So I'm guessing 300 is going to be about here. There we go. So that is working. Now say we wanted to add a label. We would create that up top, a G label. I'm just going to call mine display, call yours whatever you want, equals new, G label, and then our message, our output, just is going to be in here. So I'm just going to count how many times I reset, and I can use X for that. And I need to do an import. And then I can add my label, and I'm going to leave it up top. So I'm going to do maybe 100, 20. So it'll be more towards the top. And what I can do also is update X down here. If something happens, so every time this if is true, meaning if circle's location is greater than 250, I can update that. Now I wouldn't want to necessarily update my label right in here. Instead, I can do it in the loop, just as the last statement. So every time through the loop, it's going to check. And to do that, I would call upon my label's name and use the set label command, which will automatically update it. And then the nice thing is that we just have to use the original message. So I can replace that. And then so that I don't have to wait as long, I'm going to move this to 150. And let's take a look and see if this works. Okay, so that's working. So that's how you use a label. Now let's say I wanted to add a mouse method where my loop ends here. So that means it's going to be the end of run. And we can't have methods inside each other. That'd be like having the brake pedal on a car and the accelerator pedal do the same thing. So down here I'm going to bring in public void mouse pressed. Mouse event E. Now it's important that you do spell mouse pressed correctly, otherwise it'll think you're making your own custom version of that. I'm going to indent these. And every time we click, an event called E is going to be created. So I'm going to bring in my imports. And in here I can get the exact location of where I click by doing something like, let's see if it's an integer. We'll just use A equals E dot getX. So what that is going to be when we click the actual X location of where our mouse was, and I'm going to use B for E.getY. So then I can have an if statement down here. And the reason I would have my next if statement in mouse pressed is only if it's directly tied in with where I click. So if, and let's say the rectangle dot contains, if we want to see if we clicked inside it, we could do A comma B. And if that is the case, we can then do something with that, such as rectangle.setVisible false. And that should remove our graphic. Now the one thing this video does not cover is going to be collision detection. But one last thing we need in order for our mice to work are add mouse listeners. So we only need this once. It's going to be add mouse listeners, and that just tells the mouse click ability to start paying attention so that it's ready to listen. And we don't need any loops or anything like that because this is just waiting now that we added the mouse listeners, waiting for us to click on something. So if I click on here, we know that works.